All right, so we're recording. That means we are live. I have the Zoom room happening. If you're just joining us, come on into the screen share so you can go through this Adobe Illustrator tutorial. But I want to start with the thread just so that we're all clear on what I have planned for you guys today. Hi, good morning. Welcome in. We are in the Zoom room talking about the plans for the day. Okay, so if you pull up the thread for graphic design for this week, you want to make sure you want to start by checking that OneDrive sync. You already heard me say this. If you were, you're going to hear me saying it way too often, but you always check and make sure that you have that blue cloud on the tray section of your computer. If you're not sure where the tray section is, you can see it here. Mine's on the side over here. Let me move this. Okay. You want this blue cloud so that it says Office is syncing open files. I have some file open somewhere, so it's got that. But my cloud is blue, and that's what we want because that's where you're going to save all of your assignments. So let me switch back to my other screen real quick. Your first assignment is the line project. So the line project is that thing. Hi, good morning. I think you're on the end with that tall chair. If it's too tall, we can lower it or get you another one. All right. So before we get into the actual project, there's a couple little pieces of housekeeping that we need to do inside of Adobe Illustrator. And in order to even get to Adobe Illustrator, there's going to be two ways that you can go about that. You can click on your start menu. Mine's at the top of my screen, but yours is at the bottom. You can click on your start menu, and then you're going to have this nice list of Adobe programs. We want the orange one that says Illustrator 2024. Okay, when you click on that, it's going to pop open with what's called a splash screen, if you want the technical term, which you can't see because it's on my other monitor, but it's a white screen with a piece of artwork that says Adobe Illustrator. And you should all be spinning up on that currently. The other way that you can launch Illustrator is through Creative Cloud by clicking on that same start menu. And then go into Creative Cloud right here. And then through Creative Cloud, you can just click open on Illustrator. It should be up to date by now. If it's not, just update that one. I'll help you catch up during the work time today if we need to. All right, so in Adobe Illustrator, this is the home screen that you're going to be greeted with. It's really similar amongst all the other Adobe applications. So if you've used like Lightroom before or Photoshop, those are kind of the big ones that people tend to start with. It's going to look familiar because they all have a very similar set of tools. Sometimes when there's a new update, there will be like a what's new window that kind of pops up right here. You can click through that. You can read it. You can do whatever. But that is where that's going to pop up here. It's going to give you a couple different default options for something like a letter, a postcard, a video. There's more presets if you wanted to get into that. Just to quickly start with a canvas. Canvases in Adobe Illustrator are called artboards because you do the art on the board. And it has this cool way of becoming transparent. It's got the see-through pixels underneath, which will make more sense here in just a second. But the canvases in Adobe Illustrator are called artboards. So whenever I'm talking about an artboard, I mean in reference to the workspace inside of Illustrator. But we're not even there yet because we have not created a file. So there's this new file button right here that's going to pop up another window with a bunch of settings. A majority of the space is dominated by these presets. It's the same ones that you saw with letter, mobile. There's a couple other ones. You can see a bunch of different tabs are arranged up here for a bunch of different existing presets. We're going to ignore all that for the time being and just focus on this right-hand window right here. This is where you're actually going to be adjusting the size of your artboards and of your working screen, as well as changing the unit of measurement. This is one of the most important pieces of this window right here is the units of measurement. In doing this, you're going to set some type of size for your artwork. If you set it too small, it might not be the correct resolution. So it might be kind of off resolution when you export it, when you're ready to send it to your client. This is something you just want to make sure that you have set up here. Okay, I usually change mine to inches because I'm typically working with some type of print. You can see that it's automatically going to update the width and height parameters from points to inches. We have 288 points here. Illustrator will do a lot of math for you, which is pretty cool. You can even put like, let's do 4*10. Let's see if it lets me do that. Double click on it. So if I go 4*10 and then I hit enter, It should give me 40 inches. Yeah, so it's created an artboard with 40 inches here, but that skipped a step because I didn't want to do that quite yet. So I'm actually going to go back home. So we're back at this size and go back in a new file. And it's going to set that it's to 40 inches. Okay, whatever. So we're going to set this for demonstration purposes to 5 by 5. So we get this nice working square. And we can leave the preset name just as untitled because we're not going to save it yet. Now, don't click create though. There's a couple more things we got to check. Color mode is the other really important thing that we need to distinguish between. RGB is for digital. And then the other one, CMYK, is for printing. Since we're working purely digital for this first project, you want to leave that set to RGB color. So we have our untitled 5 by 5 inch artboard, just a single one of them. So we can leave that number set to 1. And our color mode is RGB. We're going to leave the rest of these at the default. Okay, now you can click create, but your Illustrator is going to look a little different than my Illustrator. Your Illustrator probably looks something like this, right? It's kind of thin. You have the AI stuff that I haven't really explored yet, so we'll get into that at a later day. But you have kind of a thin top bar and a thin sidebar, right? Getting around Adobe Illustrator and most of the Adobe products in general, each of your projects is going to be based in a tab of sorts up here. So each of your open files are all going to be in their own little tab, like they would be on a browser. And then all of your tools are typically going to be on the left-hand side. You can see this big column of tools right here. And then things that you change about those tools, the settings, are all going to live on this right-hand side. You can see there's lots of different things that I can adjust or I can switch up on the right-hand side. But this default workspace does not have all the tools that we need in order for this to be the fully functional Illustrator that we need it to be. Selena, can you put your phone away, please, for just a second? What I need you guys to do to get Illustrator in a way that you have access to all of the tools is to go up here to Window. It's word Window at the top. And then hover over Workspace. You can also click on it, and it will kind of lock it in a little bit better. But you go from Window and then Workspace. You get this expanded list of options here. You want to click on Essentials Classic. So that when you click on Essentials Classic, your Illustrator does something like this. You'll notice a couple more tools pop up, like this white square and this black sort of border square. The word stroke, there's some drop downs here. The tools panel has doubled in size. This is Essentials Classic, and this is the Illustrator that I learned on, because I personally don't like the Essentials version that they come with because it hides a lot of the tools that you need in order to do the graphic design stuff in the way that we need to do it. So what you guys all need to do, and you all need to check and make sure the same way that we check OneDrive syncing, is to go from Window and then Workspace and make sure that your Essentials Classic box is checked. Take a quick lap. You should see 2 columns of tools. Looks good. You only have the 1 tab open. You should see 2 columns of tools. You sign in with your sign in with your yes. All right. 5 by 5. Here. Okay, so you have to do that. Yeah, go to file. Or don't phone it. Now you all right, 5 by 5 looks good. I see you guys experiment. It's almost perfect.
That's what we're doing.
All right, so, I'll do that.
Whatever you want to get. And on that one.
And then let that run through. Okay, cool. I see you guys, that's good. You're experimenting with some tools. Change that to 5x5. Cool. Alright. Okay, so that's the first step in getting our Adobe Illustrator to be the version that we need it to be for class. Yours should look something like this. Yours is going to be a little bit bigger than mine because I have this smaller monitor to fit on the projector screen, but it should be basically about the same. Thank you guys for helping your friends out nearby. I really appreciate that. Graphic design is a very collaborative scene. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to file, change to see where it is. Yeah, take that. And make it 5 by 5. Right now it's 8. With them type stages. Make it 5 by 5. Sign in with your account. The same one that you got in there. It's going to give you access to the program. Okay. Cool. All right. So I know some of you are still signing in. In that time, I'm going to demonstrate some of the main tools that you guys are going to be using with Adobe Illustrator or with Illustrator in general. I'm going to quit calling it Adobe. Because Illustrator is a vector-based program, every time that you make a visual of some kind appear on the screen, you are in essence creating like a set of mathematical equations called paths that are going to make those specific colors appear on the specific parts of the screen. I noticed some of y'all were messing around with this paintbrush tool, which is a good start. If you click on this little paintbrush icon, or you can press B on your keyboard, you'll notice that your cursor turns into this little paintbrush with like an asterisk on it. So whenever I click and drag, it's going to make like a paintbrush stroke as if I were painting. It's free form. It's just whenever I click and hold is when I press down on the screen, or whenever I click and hold is where I'm pressing down. Ink appears, right? Ink in quotes. But watch this. So if I make a really, look at the jaggedness. Look how not smooth my line is by just scribbling like this. And watch what happens when I let go. When I let go of my mouse, you'll notice it does like a little single frame of smoothing, right? If I go like this, you can see some of the pixelated edges while I draw out this kind of this curly Q. But when I let go of my mouse, it smooths it out. That's the vectors happening in action. So vectors, as compared to being, let me get rid of all this real quick. Just holding Control Z will undo everything. Vectors exist by creating these anchor points. They're usually identified as squares. And then whatever happens in between them is just kind of the mathematical expression of this shape. And you can see this a lot more with the pen tool. The pen tool is something that we're going to have its own dedicated unit for, because it is one of the things that's kind of hard to wrap your head around. But it'll give you an example of how vectors are going to work as compared to rasters. So if you want to you can follow with me. I mostly just want you guys to watch right now. But if you look at the little tooltip, the little kind of animation that's happening when I hover over this pen tool, you can see how it's plotting the different points. And then you're able to create a straight line or a curved line between those points that can become something of a drawing. That is anchors and paths all happening to create your visual. So when you click on your pen tool, it turns into this little fountain pen icon with the asterisk. When I click, it just makes a square. Attached to that square is this little blue, it's called a rubber band. You can see how it's kind of stretching in between that anchor point that I've plotted and my cursor. because it's trying to estimate, this is the math that's happening. It's trying to estimate the thing that I want to create between this anchor point, this first one, and the next anchor point. So when I click, you can see that it's going to make a straight black line because that's what we have set up here with something called fill and stroke. So the definitions of those two terms, fill obviously is something that you do inside of like a water bottle or a jug or a bowl, right? Fill is going to be the color that is inside of a path. Path is going to be the outside edge. The stroke, if you think about when you make brush strokes with a paintbrush, or you make strokes with something like a fountain pen, that's going to be the outside edge or the straight line portions. And so if you're trying to change that color, you're going to change the stroke. So, but you notice this rubber band is always attached to my pen tool. I can't let go of it. So wherever I click, it's going to make just a new stroke because there's no fill. You can see that they're overlapping. There's two ways that you can get rid of this rubber band attached to the end of your pen tool. You can complete your path. Notice how when I hover over this starting anchor point, this was my first guy right here. When I hover over my starting anchor point, a little circle appears in the bottom of my pen tool. When I click with that circle, I'm going to create a completed path, and the rubber band has disconnected. Now, since this is a completed path, if I switch to my selection tool, which is V on your keyboard, it's this one in the top left, the one that's kind of see-through or like a darker colored triangle. Now I can move around this mathematical expression that I've created. I can resize it if I need to. And when I resize it, it doesn't get blurry because it's not actually pixels. I'm going to hold Control and zoom in. It's not actually pixels that I'm resizing, but it's the actual path itself. You can see it's getting sharper on the corners. Because this is a vector, I can resize this and it's just going to adjust the math expression as compared to the actual pixels on screen. So to give you an example of fill versus stroke, let's take our shape tool, which is M on your keyboard, or the rectangle tool by default. If you press M, you're going to get this little crosshair. You notice that it's kind of hard to see. I might make my cursor bigger for demonstration purposes. But with this crosshair, with M selected on my keyboard, pressing M, if I click and drag, it's going to make a rectangle. This rectangle, we look right here. This is going to tell us where the fill and the stroke colors are set currently. So since it has a black edge around the outside, and you'll notice this square is set to the color black. This one with the hole through it, kind of the outside edge, the one that looks like a fence, that's going to be your stroke color. This is going to affect the outside edge of shapes, as well as stuff like your paintbrush tool. And to change your stroke color, you can first press X on your keyboard. When you press X, you'll notice that these two kind of switch places. One comes to the front and the other goes to the back. With the stroke box, the lower one, with the hole through the middle, if you double click on that, you're going to get this color picker. So since I have my rectangle shape selected down here, I can change the color of the stroke. You notice I have it set to red by basically putting this little circle anywhere inside of this color picker box. But it's only set to red currently. It's only got ranges from white to black on this left side edge and bright red to black on the right hand edge. So I only have red to work with here. If I want to change the color inside of my color picker, I want to adjust this column right here that has all the different RGB or Roy G. Biv from one end to the other. I think it's in that order. Yeah, should be. By clicking and dragging on this column, you can see how it's changing the colors inside of the color picker here. And it's also changing the colors of my square underneath. It's also, in a third thing, because this little circle is in this point on this space, that's going to be the color that it references. So if I want it to be more saturated, I want to have more color, I'm going to click and drag that circle up into the top left corner here, or top right corner, I mean. So now you can look at the square underneath. When I change the position on the column, you can see it's going to change that stroke color on the rectangle. But if we look at the other box, it has this red slash through it. whenever you see this red slash, I'm actually going to click OK to get out of that color picker menu. And now I have this blue square that I can work with here. This red slash, if I hit X to bring my fill color, my fill box, the top one, this red slash means that there is no color currently set. It is currently see-through. We can do the same process to change the color on the fill by double clicking, and we're opened with the same color picker option. But look what happened. Since I double clicked, it's going to assume the default color, which for most of the Adobe products is either black or white. It's going to fill that shape in because we have this shape selected with whatever color I'm going to set right here. So complementary color to blue is orange. So let's pick a nice orange. Orange is kind of down here in the reds, in between the reds and the yellows. And then I want it to be kind of this saturated orange. This looks a little bit like the Broncos logo or the Broncos color scheme. And then I'm going to click OK. So now you can see that my fill and stroke, it's broken down the two different colors of this shape into this space right here. So if I press V on my keyboard, that's the keystroke to get your selection tool back. This top left one, the one that lets you click on and move stuff around. If I click on this path right here that I did with my, my paintbrush tool, you'll notice that the color icons in the bottom are going to switch because it has a different set of color settings compared to this rectangle right here. This has a black stroke, but it has no fill. It has no fill because it just starts at this anchor point and then works its way down, down, down to this anchor point, but it doesn't form a completed polygon. If you think back to, I think that was like 8th grade geometry or something, right? Polygons have to be closed shapes. This is a polygon. So the shape is, or the color is going to fill inside of the polygon, or inside of the shape that we have assigned, but this is not. So watch what happens if I try to set a fill color on something that's not a closed shape. Okay, it's doing something crazy already. Let's make this a really easy color to see, like this red against the black. So you notice it's not filling it in the way that it's filling in here. It's because if you have a shape or a path that does not completely close, Adobe Illustrator is going to take the shortest possible path from the start point up here down to the end point down here and fill it in with whatever color you set. So you notice this is a straight direct line from the starting point to the ending point. And if I hover over my, this and I hold space, I don't know how well you can see that on the screen, but holding space bar, you see all these little dots along this path. Each one of those dots is an anchor point. That's going to be something that you can adjust and manipulate later on, once you've already established some sort of drawings. And that we're going to use the direct selection tool for. The direct selection tool is the cousin of the selection tool, and its shortcut is A on your keyboard. With the direct selection tool, you can grab one of these anchor points. Watch as I kind of run my direct selection tool down this path. You see these white squares that pop up? Those are your anchor points. Those are your points along the graph that Adobe Illustrator is interpreting that you want to create a certain color or you want to create a certain design off of. But with the direct selection tool, as compared to the selection tool, I can move a single anchor point, and you can see the math in action as I start to adjust some of these anchor points along this mathematical expression. So I'm just clicking and holding on these squares to move them around, and automatically, if I move the endpoint, you can see that that start and end relationship happening with the fill. The direct selection tool is only used for this purpose. It's only used for directly moving around specific anchor points. But if you want to move this shape as a whole, this path that you've created here, you're going to use the regular selection tool, which will move it as one piece. Okay, that was a lot of information. That was a lot of tools that we're going to delve into deeper on each of your projects moving forward. But the basic ones that you need to know, we zoom out. Let me get rid of this by just clicking and dragging and pressing backspace. Your big pieces of vocab for now is your selection tool is V on your keyboard. It's the top left, the see-through triangle. The direct selection tool, the cousin, is A on your keyboard. It's the one that's filled in with color. You have your shape tool, which is M on your keyboard. If you click and hold on the rectangle, you'll get more shape options, but we're not going to worry about that for now. And you have B to get your brush tool or your paintbrush tool, which creates a paint stroke in whatever you have the stroke color, the one with the hole through it, set to. So like these were black strokes. If I double click and I set these to, let's go like my favorite color is purple. So let's find a nice purple. Now, because our stroke is set to purple, whenever I paint with the brush, it's going to create a purple path as compared to the original color or the default color. Okay, there's a lot of information, but these are the important things, the most important tools that you're going to be using the most frequently in your Adobe Illustrator journey. So let's talk about your actual project that you're going to be doing today and for this week, the one I have assigned. If you go to the thread, you can find it right here on line project. So this line project is due on the 9th with a deadline of the 15th, and it is worth 50% of your grade. It is your first project. So I'll walk you through the things that I'm looking for, and then I will show you how to do a few of the things that I'm looking for. Okay, we talked briefly about the correct file naming scheme. We'll touch on that closer to submission. You get 1 point per line completed. There are 3 total line projects you're going to be doing. You have, I need to adjust this rubric. There needs to be some partial credit for quality. And you need to put your name on your export is the quick breakdown of the rubric. We'll get more into that later this week. The actual project itself, if you go to modules, can be found right here, Unit 1 line. This project is a combination of these videos. I'm going to show you how to vectorize and how to do the retro line design. And the mountain logo is something that you'll study on your own. I can help you, but that's one that I want you to follow on your own. We're going to start with vectorizing. So I'm throwing around a lot of terms. I'm throwing around a lot of language here. Vectors, rasters, blah, 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 and I'm yapping and no one's really particularly, it's not very interesting, right? Vectors are these paths, right? If you click and hold, you can make a curved path, but we'll get into that later. Whereas rasters, if I open up Photoshop real quick, you don't have to do this, but I just want to show you the difference. If I make a square in Adobe Illustrator, it's the mathematical expression of this geometric shape, right? With all these square anchor points along the way. But if I'm in Photoshop, let me just pull up in my Photoshop real quick, and I do the same thing. I create a square. There's a different way to do it, so just bear with me for a second. Grown. Stop. Be nice to me. Okay. Fine. Okay, why is it not working? Oh, there we go. I had this box over here. Okay, so we have this black filled in square here. In Photoshop, if I zoom all the way in, you can see the pixels that are being set to black on this specific document. There's a ton of them because there's a whole bunch of them that make up your screen. If I were to try and resize this, just convert this to a normal layer. If I were to try and resize this, which it should let me do, my meeting's going to end soon. Okay. So, hold on. If I were to try and resize this, it would get blurry because I'm affecting the actual relationship of all of these black pixels here, which I don't want to do. I'm just going to close this for now. I'm on the free Zoom plan, unfortunately, so we have to wrap up the meeting here in 10 minutes. I will show you the first part, the retro line art design, as quick as I can. Then you guys will have some work time on that. I can help you, and then we'll get into the vectorizing here in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to delete this box because this box is not actually pixels. It's the path and the color that we assigned based on the path. Okay, so for the retro line design, if we go to Unit 1 line, it's this guy right here. If you want to follow the video as compared to listening to me, we are going to create something that is kind of from the Art Nouveau art movement, which has a bunch of like intersecting and wavy lines in a cool sort of display. And it focuses on something called creating an art brush. So this is something that I can show you and you can follow later, or you can follow along with me as I do it. But it's going to be a demonstration of something called creating an art brush. Okay, so if you're following along with me, you're going to press M on your keyboard to get your rectangle tool. You're going to click and drag out a rectangle, a thin one like this. And you want to make sure that it has a fill, but no stroke. So what does that mean? currently, if we look down here in the corner, this has a stroke. The stroke is the box with the hole in it, but no fill. It has nothing inside of the actual container. To quickly switch these, you have this little arrow, this little right angle arrow. You can click on that, and it's going to swap the fill and stroke settings to whatever you have them, like this. So with this first black rectangle, you want to make sure that when you click on it with your selection tool, which is V on your keyboard, should look like a little dark triangle on your screen when you're looking at it. You want this to be black and white for the purposes of this assignment. We can change them later on, but just make sure that it has no stroke. Your round box has a slash through it. Okay. The next thing you need to check is to go up to the View tab on your Adobe Illustrator, and this box that says Smart Guides, make sure that Smart Guides has a check next to it. The shortcut for Smart Guides is Control-U, but the quicker way to find it is by going to View and then Smart Guides, making sure that that's checked. So Smart Guides, you'll notice when I hover over the rectangle, the little pink path comes up, and it's hard to see, but there's a little blue edge when I hover over specific parts of the space here. What we're going to do is hold the Alt key on our keyboard, click and drag, and that's going to make a duplicate of this rectangle here. So if you hold Alt on your keyboard and you click on this rectangle and you drag, you'll notice it's going to pull a second one out from the first one. But what you need to do, hold Alt and scroll on your mouse to zoom in a little bit, and then you can hold the space bar to get the hand tool to kind of shuffle your way around the artboard. Click on this path. You can see that it's selected because it has the little anchor points around the outside. Hold Alt. You see your mouse turns into this little copy icon when you hover over it. And then click and drag while holding the Shift key. The Shift key is going to keep it level. You see on the screen behind me, it's not moving up or down. It's keeping it kind of locked in with the first one. You want to put those right next to each other so that there's no white space in between them, like this. When you're ready, when it looks like this on my screen, you let go of the mouse first and then the keys, because that commits the change, that commits the duplication. Okay, don't do anything else. Once you have your keyboard, once you have your two rectangles set next to one another, leave it like that. Okay. This whole time my microphone has been off. I did not know that. My fault. It's recorded in the video at least. Okay, your next step is to hold the Control key and the letter D. This is the keystroke for duplicate. Whatever you just did, it's going to repeat so that you don't have to try and guesstimate where the edges are on your shape here. So you should have something like this, and when you hover over it, it does kind of like when you shuffle a deck of cards, it goes like, you can see all of those rectangle paths inside of that space. Right? It's looking something like this. I'm going to go quickly through this next part so I can help you guys with the work time and we can have a full video of it. But once you've pressed Control D a couple times, what you need to do is click on every other rectangle and set it to white. So you're going to click on this one. You can see it gets selected. It's the only one currently selected here. Press X on your keyboard to bring your fill box forward. Double click on that fill box to get your color picker, and then click and drag the little puck, the little thing, into the top left corner to set it to white, like this. Okay? Then click OK once you've done that, and you're going to repeat that process for every other rectangle. So I'm going to quickly go through this, and we're going to make kind of a zebra stripe pattern like this. Clicking and dragging, hovering, double click on fill, put the puck in the corner. Click, double click, puck in corner. Click, double click, puck in the corner. It needs to start and end on a black rectangle. So that's important for the design. Okay, so you guys should have something that looks like this. When you hover over it, it still goes the right? It still does the card shuffling thing. Your next step is to take your mouse away from all of the rectangles that you've created here. Click and drag a box over some of them. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. You can cut it in the middle. that is going to select all of these rectangles. You know you've selected all of them because you can see kind of a line of blue dots through the middle, or blue squares through the middle. What we do next is we go to our, where is it? You click on this little brushes little container. It's like a cup full of brushes. Click on that. It's going to pop open this little brushes icon in the side here. Brushes is towards the top. I can pull up here. Let me do this. Brushes is up here towards the top of the window. Then you click on plus, this little square plus icon. We're going to create a new brush based on this texture that we've just created here. So you click plus. It's going to pop open this new brush settings right here. You want to select art brush when you see that option here. And if I'm going too fast, I know I'm trying to wrap this up. I will help you one-on-one, I promise. So if you're here, you click on the white plus box in the bottom, and then you click on art brush, and then okay. It's going to pop open this art brush options window. We want to pick the arrow to go either up or down because we want it to follow along the edge of the zebra stripe that we've just created here. Thank you for scooting back. Okay, I'm going to go up. You can go up or down. You just can't go left or right. Click OK. And you can see that zebra line is going to appear in our brushes. So if I take if I click and hold on my rectangle and I draw out an ellipse, which is another name for a circle, I'm going to actually deselect by just clicking inside the artboard. If I draw out a circle, you can hold shift to make it a perfect circle. You can see those smart guides in action, keeping it a perfect circle. I'm going to set the fill to none by clicking this little red slash right here. I'm going to set the stroke to white by clicking on this little white box right here so that it has no fill and is just a white path around the outside. If I click on my brushes icon, which you can find right here, it's the same place that you made the brush just a second ago. And then you click on those zebra stripes, it's going to apply that pattern around the outside path of the circle here. Okay, so I'm going to hold Alt and zoom out a little bit. Now I have, if I use my selection tool, even though this is still just a circle with no fill, it's taking the texture that I created and putting it around the outside of that circle. You can still hold Alt on your keyboard and you can make copies by holding Alt and clicking and dragging. It's going to just duplicate whatever path you create there. And the last step that we need here is we need to start cutting these up into smaller pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this Zoom rooms to get everybody at this point, let my thing cool down because it won't let me meet for a bit. And then we'll get into the next half of the retro line, which is actually assembling them. So I want to help you guys get to this point first. Okay, let me wrap this up real quick. We are recording, so we're live for just a brief second. I see 2 people. Please join the Zoom room real quick so I can show you how to save. I don't want you guys losing your work and then having to catch up later this week. Taking that 30% late penalty. Nobody wants that. Okay, 7 of us, 8 of us. I'm gonna walk through it. It's a pretty simple process, but I want everybody to save their work before we go into our flex things. All right, so if you're looking at the top tab of any of the Adobe projects or any of the Adobe products, you'll notice that if you haven't saved it, it's going to be called untitled, and there's going to be this asterisk here. So if you see that asterisk, it means you have not saved your work since the last time you made a change. So to do that, you just go File and then Save As, very similar to like a Word document. And we want to ignore this hullabaloo. We're saving on our computer. I don't trust the Creative Cloud because I've seen too many projects lost. I've lost too many of my own projects. We're going to save on your own computer. That's going to pop open your File Explorer. I was working on something last time. So this is where, if you go into the graphic design folder that you've made in your OneDrive, you click on one. Here, let me make this a little bigger so it's easier to see. 1 second. Just resize everything here. Okay, so you should have your OneDrive signed in. You know it's signed in when it says Issaquah Wedna EDU. Okay. If you go into a graphic design folder, if you have not made one yet, you should do that. But as long as it's in your OneDrive, we can work with it. I'm going to go into my first period graphic design folder, and I'm just going to call this for now retro line. It's not the Canvas naming scheme yet because we're still a work in progress. So you want to make sure that you save as type. You want to make sure that that's set to Adobe Illustrator and it says .ai on it. Okay. When you click save, it's going to pop open with this version or whatever. You just click OK. And you can see that it changes the name in the top tab right here to whatever you called it, .ai. So if we go into our OneDrive folder, semester 2, first period graphic design, you're going to see that it says retroline.ai. There's a little orange triangle, or not orange triangle. It's not a triangle at all. An orange square that says AI, and it's got some of your work, at least what's visible on the artboard, inside of this little file preview here. I don't know if you guys have that exactly, but that's how you want to save your work so that you don't lose it, and you're saving it in what's called a raw format. You can come back and edit it. You can still have all your vectors and paths. We haven't done what's called rasterize it yet. So we'll do that once we get closer to submitting Thursday, Friday territory. So as long as you've saved it as an AI file, you can come back and edit these paths whenever you need. And that is something that I'm going to check and make sure you guys have done real quick. Yeah, because I don't want you to lose your progress. All right, cool. Thank you. That was a quick Zoom room, and then we'll get into our Flex stuff here in just a second.